wisdom and nuggets. Thank you so much.
My wife Laura and I have been connected with Myers Park for about 7 years now, and we're so pleased when we have the opportunity to experience people like Professor Anthea Butler. It's my privilege to introduce her today. Dr. Butler is the Geraldine R. Siegel Professor in American Social Thought and Chair of Religious Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Butler's scholarly accolades include the prestigious 2022 Martin Marty Award from the American Academy of Religion. She's served as president of the American Society for Church History and also president for the Society for Pentecostal Studies. Dr. Butler's recent book, which is on sale and some of you have already gotten, White Evangelical Racism, The Politics of Morality in America, has sparked crucial conversations about the complex relationship between faith and racial dynamics in our country. Now, if you search for her on the internet, read her opinion pieces in the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, NBC, The Guardian, where she is mentioned, or see her on news broadcasts or in documentary films, you know that Dr. Butler's scholarship takes subjects that are often found at the boundaries and moves them to the center. She is a sought-after commentator for major news outlets and bringing her expertise to a wider audience. She's also a model professor and scholar. She has a strong reputation among the highest circles of people doing the most rigorous, most interesting, most important work happening in American religion today. She works at a tremendous institution where she invests in students, so she is part of training the next generation. What I appreciate about Anthea, someone who I consider to be both a colleague and a friend, is her unflinching commitment as a truth teller. And even when it's uncomfortable, and I have watched her tackle fearlessly thorny intersections of faith, race, and politics that many shy away from, including many of the most prominent scholars in our nation. We're dealing with a sharp mind and sometimes a sharp tongue. But be assured that her intellect is matched by her genuine warmth, a blending of academic rigor and real-world relevance. Dr. Butler's insights will undoubtedly challenge and enlighten us, and we are so fortunate to have her. Would you please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Anthea Butler.
Thank you, Gerardo. Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Reverend Benjamin, for having me. All of you who are here today, I don't know if I can tell you that you're in for a treat, but you're in for an interesting talk. And I want to thank you for being here because I am very happy to be here in North Carolina. And let me tell you why. You're ground zero. You don't know it yet, but you're ground zero. And you'll understand by the end of this talk why I said you're ground zero. Because I believe that this state, and particularly this town, will be able to help move the needle a bit. And I don't mean in a political way, but I mean in a religious way. And I say that because we're at a very crucial time. I've been giving talks about Christian nationalism since around the end of January 2021, when it became clear that we were dealing with something else in this nation besides all the mess we've been dealing with before. And I'm here to sort of be a prophet. Prophets don't know how to shut up sometimes. We end up getting tired and we end up getting driven out of town in certain kinds of ways. I hope you won't do that to me today. But there are truths to be told. And part of those truths that need to be told right now is that Christianity in this country is in peril. Now, I'm not one of those people who are going to sit up here and tell you that there's one kind of Christianity over another. There's just Christianity. How people use it is another way altogether. And so how some people are using it right now is to be divisive, to create a wedge, and more importantly, to drive violence. You don't know it, but you've been in the midst of a holy war. You come to church every Sunday, you listen to good sermons, you go home, you think that that's it. And maybe you read your Bible during the week, maybe you pray, maybe you think about, what's happening at the church and what you're involved in. But I need to tell you that there's other people thinking about Christianity in other ways in this country. And not just here, but around the world. And so what I want to take you through today might be a little long, but I need you to really understand that I'm putting some stuff together for you that most of you don't get to see, or you might hear little snippets of, but you don't get it all the time. And so that's why I've titled this Theocracy or Democracy, the Test for America in 2024, because this is where we're going. And you need to understand that should things go a certain way, and even if they don't go a certain way, we still have a problem in this country. It doesn't matter who wins on November the 5th. That's going to scare you, but I promise you, we still got a problem. Either way. So let me start by playing somebody for you, and I'll explain who this is.
Coming back. That's what we're practicing for. That's why hell hates it that we're worshiping at every capital across America. That's why we get called, well, you're a Christian nationalist. You want the kingdom to be the government. Yes. You want God to come and overtake the government. Yes. You want Christians to be the only ones that, yes, we do. We wouldn't be a disciple of Jesus if we didn't believe that. We want God to be in control of everything. We want believers to be the ones writing the laws. Yes, guilty as charged. I mean, it's funny when I meet Christians where I'm like, I'm like, have you read the Great Commission? Like, this is actually what we want. Guilty. It's all.
Hang on a second. I really want to thank Right Wing Watch and People for American Way, because they have been stalwarts in doing this work. Okay, that's first of all. That is Sean Foyt. Last Saturday, Sean Foyt was at the capital of my state where I live, Pennsylvania. He's in Harrisburg, and he was conducting a worship service. In another week, probably, I think about a week and a half maybe, he will be in Washington, D.C., and they've been doing this thing called Kingdom to the Capitol. And the Kingdom to the Capitol is a movement over all 50 states where he takes worship services and goes to claim that ground for the kingdom of God. You heard him. He said, we want Christians in every area of government. Yes. Now, for some of you, that might not seem like a bad thing, but I need to tell you, it might be. Because by the time you get over with this and you see the kind of Christians he's talking about that he wants to be in government, that is going to be a problem. Now, Sean Foyt probably isn't a familiar name to you, but he came on the scene during the coronavirus pandemic. He held meetings in places like Atlanta and Texas and other things that were meetings that we were not supposed to be having during that time because people had banned church services. Most people were online. But he brought people together to sing and worship and praise God, which you would think is not a big thing. But really what they were doing was rallies that promoted not just worship, but conspiracy theories about the coronavirus. This has been a political activity of his, and this political activity is poised towards something. It's poised towards a theocratic state. So if you don't believe me, let me play this clip for you from this guy, and I think you know who that silhouette is, and let you hear what he said to religious broadcasters in February of 24.
People in this room are the people we want to hear from, and they have to have a political voice. You know, if you think about it, you have men, you have women, and you have religion. If you look at it, you have more than the men, you have more than the women. You have such power, but you weren't allowed to use that power, and you're now allowed to use it. I get in there, you're going to be using that power at a level that you've never used it before. It's going to bring back the churchgoer. I mean, you have to see, I don't like the charts when I see charts where they're going in the wrong direction. We don't like that. We're going to bring it back, and I really believe it's the biggest thing missing from this country. It's the biggest thing missing. We have to bring back our religion. We have to bring back Christianity in this country. Thank you. Thank you very much. I issued guidance making clear that the right of freedom to worship does not end at the door at a public school, and I supported school prayer, very important, school prayer, which we unfortunately had to force into some schools. It should be very easy. You would think it would be very easy, but it wasn't, but we did it. I was the first and only president to convene a meeting of the United Nations to end religious persecution worldwide. First time they've ever done it. They were not thrilled, but that was okay. They did it. I signed an executive order to install faith advisors in every federal department and agency so that your voice and the Christian worldview would be heard.
I want to stop right there. Let me talk to you about that. I want to appoint advisors. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means in a minute. But the key to this little piece that I played to you is about how much power would Christians have if they voted for him? What would happen? And so this is the lure. This is the lure that is bringing in a lot of people right now because they believe that former President Donald Trump is the person who's going to bring Christianity back. Well, Christianity never left people. You know this because you're sitting in a church right now. Some of you may believe, some of you may not, but I don't think we have a problem with people worshiping in this country. What we have a problem with is people who want to use that worship for material and political and power gains. And that is the key. I want you to understand that this talk today is not about trying to get Christians out or to trying to vilify anybody. I want you to see a landscape that exists right now. And that landscape that exists right now is a landscape of Christian nationalism, racism, gender bias, and violence. And all of that is about creating power. And so this particular election cycle, where you've heard conversations, and you've heard these conversations even before in the 2020 cycle, in the 2016 cycle, about religion and politics and voting and faith and all of those things, they have led us to a particular kind of place and a particular kind of vision and a particular kind of way in which Christianity is being weaponized in order to gain power over this nation in a different way than the founders and framers wanted it. I live in Philadelphia. I can walk from my institution down to Independence Hall in about an hour. Short walk, not bad. What the Constitution was written for, what the Declaration was written for, was not about having a state religion. It was about people who were running from a religion that they didn't want to practice because they wanted to be able to practice the way that they wanted to. That is the founding of this nation. But this has been corrupted. And this corruption is eating us alive right now. Because while this nation has opened its arms up to all kinds of immigrants, to all kinds of people, in various states and various religions, what we are faced with now are people who want to close those doors, who want to shut them and seal us shut inside with them. And that's not going to work. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about why this is and what is happening right now and what is going on. There are competing versions of race, democracy, and religion in America. And we need to talk about how this has come about to make this melasma, this mess that we're in right now. So let me go over these with you. First is a clash between ideas about America's founding. Is the nation divinely inspired or not? One of the things that Gerardo didn't mention about me, but I will say it freely, is that I am part of the 1619 Project. I have a chapter in the book called Church, where I wrote about the Black church and political action from the 19th century forward. And this book was vilified when it came out. And, there's problems with everything, but I want to just say this. One of the reasons why this book was vilified was because it didn't start with the mythos about 1776. This place was around long before that. And if you try to forget about slavery happening, or you try to tell your kids that you can't learn about slavery in school, or we try to, say that, Black History Month or all these other kinds of months like Hispanic History Month that we're in right now, are not to be taught in schools, we have a problem because we are erasing history. And part of the project of these people is to erase history and make that history different, which is why when Donald Trump was in office, they started a 1776 project to counter this. And that project was about lauding all the founders and framers and all of these people and actually lauding white patriarchy and white Christian patriarchy, and erasing anybody else, erasing gender, erasing race, erasing the contributions of everybody. And so that's the first idea. The second idea is who can access democracy? Can you vote? Can you not vote? If you have been paying attention to the news right now, you will see that across several important states right now that voting rolls have been purged of people who are legally registered to vote. But now you got to check and make sure, and every last one of you better check and make sure you're on the roll, because you might not be there, white or not, whatever color you are. You might not even be on the rolls right now because of your political affiliation. So who can access democratic processes in this country? That is the question. What is the meaning of civic engagement? Is it morality or is it equality? What I mean by that is how is your morality being used? Is your morality being used as a cudgel, as a shield, as I talk about in my book, White Evangelical Racism, to pretend that you have Christian morality, but in fact you want power over other people? Or you want to tell somebody what to do, who to be with, who to love, how to dress, how you see your identity? What does that civic engagement mean? Does it mean equality for all? Does it mean that, we hold these truths self-evident? And even when those words were written, that wasn't really true, but we need to hold to them as part of this nation's founding. If all men and women are created equal, then what does that mean when some people want to say that some people in this nation are not equal? And I'm going to show you some words before we finish with this today that'll let you know that we have a very big problem right now. What is Christianity's role in political action? Is it to create a theocracy or is it to create a democracy? What I mean by the term theocracy is a nation that is run on biblical kinds of principles. No matter what religion it is, you could have a theocracy in Iran, for instance, with Islam. But in this particular case of America, I'm talking about white American Protestant Christianity of a certain sort. Now, other things can get folded into that. But the issue here is this. Do we have a democratic process where people are participating? Do we have 3 branches of government that are not run by religionists? Or do we have something else in mind? What do these people want in terms of government? And I'll talk about how that has come about as well. Should Christians be active in the major arenas of public life? Well, we've always had Christians in arenas of public life. But how are they operating in public life is the question. Are they like the governor of Oklahoma, making sure that certain kinds of Bibles are bought? I'll talk about that in a minute. Those of you who are laughing know what I'm talking about. How are Christians active in public life? Do they impose their Christianity over others? You are dealing with somebody in this state right now whose name I'm not even going to bring up, that, he's big on his Christianity, but, maybe he might want to start looking at some videos. What defines a Christian? Is it race? Is it political affiliation? Right now, we have people who believe that the word evangelical means you are also Republican. It is synonymous. It's synonymous like this in the press, I need to tell you, because what you're going to see is I'm going to blow this apart for you, because today I'm going to show you that the word evangelical is not the right word to term what we're dealing with right now. It's just not. And we're dealing with much more than just regular evangelicals like Billy Graham, and doubtful that he would even understand his own son, Franklin, right now. Yeah, I know, I'm getting close. Hit dogs go hollow, as they say. Here's the problem. We are dealing with changes in evangelical belief systems that have happened over time. I would say that this has been happening underneath for a very long time, but I like to point to 2008 as a moment. Now, why am I pointing to 2008? I'm pointing to 2008 because of a particular person who entered into the political space, and that was Sarah Palin. Some of you might remember when Sarah Palin was out, that at the beginning, there was a video of her going around with hands being laid on her by a man called Bishop Muthie. Now, this Bishop Muthie was not a regular Catholic or Protestant kind of bishop. He was a New Apostolic Reformation bishop, and I'll talk about what that means in a minute. But that inserted something into that election cycle that we've been dealing with since 2008. And we are now dealing with it in 2024 in some very big ways. And I'll talk about that. But the first thing I want to talk about is conspiracy theories. You are dealing with this on the other side of your state with people right now who think FEMA are only not going to do anything for the people who lost homes in Asheville and up in hollers of North Carolina, who have lost everything. But we have these vicious conspiracy theories that are running rampant because people like to lie. And if you know your scripture, you know it says that some folks like to lie better than the truth. And right now we're living in that time. These conspiracy theories that intersect with evangelical beliefs about the end times. What does it mean to have the end? Let me just bring this up right now. All I got to say is one word: Israel. What is happening right now in the Middle East has a lot of people's ears buzzing because they're thinking about, what does this mean? Does it mean Jesus is coming back, or does it mean we're going to be in power? Demons. You probably heard several political leaders call people demonic or demons. You've probably heard Kamala Harris been called the Jezebel spirit. That's a whole nother unpacked thing we don't even have time for today. Child abuse, government. The ways in which these things are coming together right now as conspiracy theories are very dangerous because they are impelling people to do things. And you've probably heard the term QAnon. I won't talk about that here. But the fact that QAnon people are still out there today in Dallas, Texas, on the square, waiting for JFK and RFK to come back, lets you know that some people's minds just ain't right. And while we can laugh at it, I promise you it's serious, because they have given up their whole lives and kicked off their families for these conspiracy theories that they've believed in. Individuality is not about personal sin anymore, but how do you manage the truth? I like to call it do your own research. The last few Halloweens, I've loved people who've put this thing, RIP, and a skeleton in their front yard where it says, I did my own research. Pretty funny, but there's a point. And the point is doing your own research without relying on researchers is crazy. One of the things that has driven me crazy in the last couple of days has been this. There's a man on X right now, social media platforms. He's been interviewed in the press. His mother, he is a meteorologist. His mother does not believe him about the storm that just happened. She does not believe him about Milton. She said, I know that the government is making these storms move towards Florida. This is serious because we have people who are not in touch with reality right now. And if you are not in touch with reality right now, you can be led astray. Authoritarianism as a Christian worldview. We don't have people who want elections anymore. We have people in this country who don't want elections. They want authoritarianism. They want a king. I believe that this whole place fought a big war called the Revolutionary War so we wouldn't have a king. There was a nice little thing that came out on Broadway about that. But clearly nobody really saw it and they didn't even watch the movie. Because basically, if you knew some history, this is not a place for authoritarianism. This is a place of freedom. This is a place where we elect our leaders. We don't have kings or queens. But authoritarianism is starting to take over evangelical and Christian beliefs in certain kinds of ways that dovetail with the ways people think about their pastors, their religious leaders, and sometimes this ends up in a really bad place, as you know, if you've been reading about the state of Texas and a whole bunch of pastors who've been falling into a bunch of sin and getting kicked out of their pulpits. Republican Party as Republican religion. Back in 2014, I wrote an article about this, and I called it Republican Party into Republican Religion. And this is true. The party is now a religious party. Just consider the fact that the Speaker of the House is flying flags just like one of our Supreme Court justices that's about a flag that was at January 6th. We have a problem. Embrace an emphasis, I want to add, of white supremacist talking points and beliefs. You may have been hearing the former president on the campaign trail talk a lot about how Kamala Harris is dumb, how genetics are important. Genetics, I'm investigating, as the New York Times put up, I hate this, they put up, genetics is an important thing, and I'm like, I don't think you seem to understand what this means. What he's talking about is white people being genetically superior to everybody else. These are racial politics. I can't tell you this any stronger than that. The whole thing about taking away DEI has been about, well, you know, they're just a DEI hire. I have a friend who jokes on social media all the time is because people write to him and say he's a DEI hire, and they usually put it DIE hire. You know, and that's ridiculous, which tells you a lot right there. But these kinds of talking points and beliefs are seeping into everyday life and people's thinking. And then finally, and the biggest one I think is really important, and I'm going to unpack this for you in a minute, is the Pentecostalizing of evangelism. And what I mean by that is people don't really have pure biblical beliefs according to their denominations anymore. Excuse me. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that the average Pentecostal has beliefs about miracles. There's nothing wrong with Pentecostals. They believe in speaking in tongues and laying on hands and things like that. Most evangelicals don't believe that. Most evangelicals are biblically based, and Pentecostals are too. They would say that, you know, we have 4 pillars of our faith, you know, Bible believing, Christianity, belief in Jesus as the Son of God, you know, crucifixion and the resurrection, right? But now what we have is a sort of extra orthodoxy. And that extra orthodoxy is landed on top of regular Christian beliefs. And now what we have are people who believe in spirits. They believe in demonic possession. They believe in certain places being high places, which is why Sean Feucht has been going up to every capital. One of the things he said about Pennsylvania was that he felt that because William Penn founded Philadelphia, that was fertile ground for Christianity. And despite the fact that the Lenape Indians were there long before William Penn got there. So these beliefs, what we call the New Apostolic Reformation or Dominionist movements, have overtaken everything. And what this movement is about latter-day apostles and prophets. And these movements believe that they need to take over the 7 mountains of politics and culture. So politics, education, you know, entertainment, things like that. They believe that Christians should be over that. And so when this happened just last week in my state, where Lance Wallnau came with J.D. Vance, Lance Wallnau is actually an apostle in the New Apostolic Reformation movement. This is not normal, folks. A Republican candidate is not with some regular pastor. He's not with Franklin Graham. He's with Lance Wallnau, who made his fame being a pro-life person, but is now part of this New Apostolic Reformation movement that advocates for violence, believes in prophecy, has given prophetic words, and I'm about to show you how this is blossoming out into other things. And so this miasma of Christian faith and belief is now implanted into the Republican Party. Back in 2016, I used to call all these people who were like, you know, Paula White and others the D list, because I didn't think that, you know, why would he bother with people who were prosperity gospel people and New Apostolic Reformation people? Why would he bother with those people? The reason why he bothered with those people is because he saw the trend. I give Trump credit. He sees the trends. And the trend for him was not normal Christians, not everyday folks like you sitting in church on Sundays and Wednesdays and going to Bible study and all that. The trend he saw were these people who were talking about dominionism, power, taking over the government, getting demons out of government, calling people Satanists who were just doing their job every day in the library. Those are the kind of people he coupled with. And so to see J.D. Vance, the vice presidential candidate, with Lance Wallnau in the middle of my state, Pennsylvania, which is a, you know, battleground state, tells me that this is really serious for them. And I'm going to show you some stuff in a minute that's going to really flip your wig. Now, you probably haven't noticed this, but this is from the 2020 cycle, but I wanted to use this as a way to show you what is happening. General Michael Flynn and others have started this road show. This kind of started in 2020, and they're doing the same thing this year, called the We Awakening America Tour. They're recruiting an army of God. That woman you see on the left with the stars and stripes on her, she is getting baptized in a cow trial. This is not a church. This is an outside revival meeting. They have apostles and prophets, prophetic utterances that tell people every day what they think is going to happen with Donald Trump. or happen with this movement. And these things are really frightening because one of the things that I've noticed now here in the last month and a half is that a lot of these prophets have been talking about violence. There's going to be a violent revolution. There's going to be revolution coming on November 5th. And you can hear the same language, if you are paying attention, coming from the Republican candidate. And so all of these people, and you can notice there's Don Jr. up in front and General Michael Flynn there and some others, all of these people are sold into this, and these movements have been going across the country. Last election cycle in 2020, the group that helped sponsor this, Turning Point USA, was doing these meetings almost every weekend in Arizona and having one big meeting a month. There was like a revival meeting where they would have all the Republican candidates. This is why Carrie Lake will never give up, because she believes she has been ordained by God. But let me let you hear General Flynn speak in his own words about how he sees this country. And this will be a little bit longer clip, but I think you need to hear it. And you might have seen it today in the movie, but I'm not sure.
A lot about from different people today, I think, when we talk about faith, there's something shaking. Okay, the ground underneath us is shaking. And it's shaking because, there is a time, and you have to believe this, that God Almighty is like involved in this country, because this is it. This is it. This is the last place on earth. This is the shining city on the hill. This is the city on the hill. The city on the hill. The city on the hill was mentioned in Matthew. Okay, it was mentioned in Matthew. And then a guy by the name of Winthrop mentioned it again in 1630. In 1630. Okay, before the country was formed. And he also coined the term New England. We're going to go to this New England, this new world he was talking about. And he talked to the people there about this thing called the city on the hill. And then Ronald Reagan, a couple of hundred years later, again, talked about it as the shining city on the hill. And they're talking about the United States of America. Talking about the United States of America, because when Matthew mentioned it in the Bible, he wasn't talking about the physical ground that he was on. He was talking about something in the distance. So if we are going to have one nation under God, which we must, we have to have one religion, one nation under God and one religion under God, right? All of us together, working together. I don't care what your ecumenical service is or what you are. We have to believe that this is a moment in time where this is good versus evil. So, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. General Flynn said several things here. One, he did get the analogy right for where the city on a hill shows up in the Bible, but I did not know America was in the Bible. I went to seminary for 3 years. I'm still trying to figure out what class I missed, because clearly we did not get the same thing. That's number one. Second, he talked about, there's something happening, there's something shaking, and this has been the kind of language that people have been using for like a revival, but it's more than just revival at this point. It's more about violence, and you'll see why in a minute. The third thing is that we have to have one nation, one religion under God. What is that religion? Christianity. Now, there's supposed to be freedom of worship in this country, freedom to be whoever you want to be. But if we're talking about Christianity as being the main religion, then that means that if you've practiced something else, you are going to be on the outs. And that is a problem. Let me go further. You want to know where he is today?
A lot about from.
He's in Pennsylvania. Now don't look at that roided up Trump in the back. He's at the Rod of Iron Freedom Festival. You're probably asking yourself, what is the Rod of Iron? Rod of Iron is an offshoot from Sun Myung Moon and the Unification Church, also known as the Moonies. Okay? The son broke off from his mother. He has started a huge compound right outside of Scranton in PA. They believe that the rod of iron that is spoken of in Scripture is the AK-47, folks. They sell guns. It is a fully strapped, as us in Texas would say, organization that wears crowns during their services and has guns. And this weekend, they're having their Freedom Festival, of course, right before the election. And General Flynn is the major guest. I just pulled these so you could kind of see the whole thing. You see he's got that crosshairs right on him. They're playing his film that you can go stream online and having a movie premiere for him. And this was a picture of him standing in front of this MAGA truck, so I thought that'd be a nice little thing for y'all to see, the kinds of stuff I'm seeing in Pennsylvania right now. You probably see it here too, but this one is a little bit more tricked out, I would say. And these are the speakers that are going to be there this weekend, and a lot of these people are, again, connected to the party. Donald Trump Jr. has been at this lots of times. Now, this is not the only place where they are. They are also in Tennessee, and they're also building a compound in Texas right now. This is like a Christian militia writ large. But General Flynn is a part of this. And so when you have this kind of intersection of a former general with a movement that is about guns and God, and not in the way that, you talk about normal people saying I'm a hunter or whatever. These are serious weaponry that is sold during this weekend. I mean, like all the armory people come, it's a big deal. If we had time, I'd show you more clips of it. But suffice to say that these things are coming together in a certain kind of way. It's not just about a revival meeting. It's not just about, a religion with guns. It's about creating Christianity as a religion of violence. And I'm going a certain way today because there's so many issues in this election, but I think the issue that we need to be dealing with and be prepared for is what is going to happen post-November 5th. Because some of us who were watching this beforehand knew what was coming in December of 2020, but nobody was listening. And everybody got surprised when January 6th happened. Now, let me just draw a comparison here because I haven't talked about the rest of the world yet, but I want to draw a comparison to one place, Brazil. Jair Bolsonaro, who was the former president, tried to pull this stuff too. His people took over Brasilia, the capital of Brasilia. It did some of the same kinds of similar things that happened here on January 6th. Lots of those people are in jail already. Some of our people are in jail already. Jair Bolsonaro cannot run for president again until 2030. He has been banned. I'm going to leave it like that. Now, what are you dealing with in this election cycle? What is at stake if Trump wins? I did not come here to give you a political message. I am talking about this from a religious perspective, okay? Because you need to understand that right now we're not dealing in these sort of what ifs. We're dealing with stuff that we actually know, okay? How a 900-plus page document called Project 2025 is going to revamp government. People have already been interviewed. They've already been lined up. The Department of Education will be gone. People who will not sign a loyalty oath to this, if he is president, will be kicked out. They're already doing FOIA, and if you don't know what FOIA is, it is a Freedom of Information Act request to find out anybody who's mentioned things like climate change or LGBTQ rights, anything like this. They're already doing that. They're trying to get all of this information in anticipation of winning so that they will be able to get that. What is at stake is this protection and the predilection for violence and racial animus. The things that I have been hearing, I've been watching this for a long time, folks, and I need to tell you that the language that Trump and others that are using right now, and especially religious leaders are using, is very frightening. It is racialized. It is demonization. You've seen what happened with Haitians. Haitians is code for black because most people in this country don't know how to, look at somebody and decide if they're Haitian or not. They're just going to see a black face. And this city in Ohio that has had to go through this is ridiculous because these people have been persecuted. And the whole town is being persecuted because of this kind of racial animus, these kinds of lies. And when J.D. Vance said, well, it doesn't need to really be true, that they're eating cats and dogs. I mean, I'm sure you were sitting there going during the debate, if you watched it, going like, why is he talking about eating cats and dogs? This is a long-term lie that has been told about people of various kinds of faiths and ethnicities. They've told it about Asians. They've told it about black people. They've told about everybody that is non-white. So you need to understand what you are hearing is not just like some crazy talk. It's got religious undertones. It's got undertones of violence. It has a purpose, and it is a purpose to weaponize a populace. There is no church-state separation. This is the only thing I will ever agree with Representative Lauren Boebert, because I know historically that Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to the Danbury Church in Connecticut and talked about the separation of church and state. We have had that as a principle. But in reality, we have a religious test, and we've been doing religious tests for years about candidates who are running for president. We want to hear them say religious things. We want our presidents to say, God bless America. We have one of the most religious presidents now, and I'm not even talking about religion in the sense of religious, but one of the most Christian presidents we've ever had, at Mass every Saturday or Sunday. But this man is called a demon. But he has been faithfully a practicing Christian and a practicing Catholic. But he's the demon because he is a Democrat and he's in power. Erosion of voting rights. We've talked a little bit about that. I would just say to you, look at the news right now and see how much that this is going to be a contested election. Do not expect, even if it is overwhelmingly won by one party or the other, that there will not be contestation of this election. Don't expect it. You need to know that November 5th is not the end. My prediction is not till Thanksgiving, if then. Okay? LGBTQ rights and trans rights. I can't tell you how frightening this has to be for anybody who is transitioning, anybody who is, has a child that wants to transition, anybody that is gay or lesbian or transgender or doesn't affiliate with either. This is an attack, and this is a very coordinated attack. I teach at the University of Pennsylvania. We had a swimmer who was, as a woman, had transitioned, and she got vilification, and we got so much press and so much hate mail at the university because of this. This was a few years ago when she was a student. And this has multiplied tremendously throughout this country, and is all based on religious belief, okay? I have not even mentioned abortion here, but let me just say to you that the stringent regulation of reproductive rights and women's rights is going to make women fifth-class citizens. I'm not even saying second or third class, fifth-class citizens. You'll be able to take your dog who is having a bad pregnancy to the vet before you'll be able to have your wife or your friend taken care of at an emergency room if they are miscarrying. That should be sobering to all of you. If you have not read all of these stories, if you have not paid attention, please pay attention. My state, my home state of Texas, where I am, when Wendy Davis stood up and tried to filibuster in 2012 against the abortion rights, Texas and Mississippi and Louisiana were at the forefront of making Roe fall. Women's reproductive rights are not simply just about abortion. But if you need to have some kind of work done on your body because you have a cyst or you have, fibroids or something else, they will say, are you pregnant? You might not get treatment if you are bleeding out in the parking lot. And so is this what we want for, your children or your grandchildren? This is our future. Immigration restrictions and constrictions. This is going to be the biggest thing happening because what the party has been talking about right now is deporting people. Do you think they're going to bother to look to see if you are really an American citizen or not? I remember a story of a woman in 2020 who was Mexican. Her husband's Mexican. They had a restaurant, Midwest, and, voted for Trump. And then they came and took her husband away about a year later because he was undocumented. She's like, I can't understand why they would take him away. I voted for Trump. Well, guess what? Your husband was undocumented. You voted for your husband to be taken away because there wasn't a path to citizenship for him. Even though he's been a business owner, even though he's paid taxes, even though he's done all this stuff, he just gets wiped out. I have had undocumented students that I am worried sick for right now because I don't know what's going to happen after this election cycle to them. They have families, they have jobs. They've tried every way through DACA and hoping DACA was going to work. But now we have people who not only want to shut the door, but they want to deport everybody and put them in camps. There was a movie about this in the 90s called The Siege. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it because that could very well happen here. We talk about, oh, this is a great nation, blah, blah, blah. Well, we did this to the Japanese during World War II. Don't think it can't happen again. We have to get clear-eyed about what is being said in public every day. And nobody's questioning this. Well, some of us are, because clearly I'm here talking to you about it. But on the whole, people don't even know this stuff is going to happen. They're just thinking, well, maybe I won't vote. Maybe I won't go to this thing. And they don't understand that if things go awry, they may be living in a theocracy that could become just as bad as the Taliban. Because this imposition of Christianity and evangelical beliefs and ideas about government, about education, about culture is important. Let's talk about one little thing real quick, because I don't have a picture of it, but that Trump Bible, the fact that it costs $3 to print in China, or as he says, China, right? And the state of Oklahoma has mandated that every student must have a Bible, and they're going to buy it at full price of $59.95. Now, I need to tell you something. Those of you who've seen people who carry Bibles, you know, you might carry a little Bible or something like that, right? Something you can put around. No kid wants a Bible that's this big. That's first of all. Second, no kid wants a Bible that's going to have like the Declaration and the Bill of Rights and all this other stuff embedded in it, because guess what? It's not even supposed to be in that scripture in the first place. They're not separating church and state, folks. They're putting it right together and selling it for $59.95. You can get your sneakers too if you want. So I asked the question, is America doomed? Well, I'm going to let you hear from Sean Foyt and let them talk about it, because I'm sure he's got something to say about it.
Average person really understands just when you do have Harrison Waltz, you are taking a gigantic leap to the left on every economic and social issue all at once, irrecoverable.
Yeah, and I really like, I love some of the things you've been sharing, and I want to echo a little bit of that, as there is some serious demonic sorcery, witchcraft thing going on here that would even remotely make this race tight. Because, I mean, for 3.5 years, these guys have destroyed America on every level, and all the polling proves that, you know, in the economy, on healthcare, on the border, on all these things, right? And so now you have a person that's actually convincing a lot of Americans that she is going to do something she hasn't done in the last 3.5 years.
She's the change candidate. She's the change candidate.
She can fix the problems that she created. Like, that's the most mind-boggling thing to me. I mean, you got to be under some serious, like, wicked spell to buy into that. And
so I just want you to know, if you're under that wicked spell, then you know. You see what I'm saying here? This is about how do you demonize folks. And I noticed, I know you saw that book in the corner, Vote Like Jesus. Now, there was a big pastor in Texas just this past week who gave a whole sermon about voting like Jesus, and it sounded like Jesus was actually Republican. And I decided not to show that because I wanted to do two things here at the end, and then I want to talk to you about what is it that you need to do. I want to show you, let's go here.
Well, I'm here today with my friend.
Let's not talk to him in front. I want to show you what Trump put up yesterday. Normally I don't do this, but because I'm trying to be bipartisan, but I can't be because this is just wrong. We are known all throughout the world as Occupied America. No, we're not. But to everyone here in Colorado and all access across our nation, I make to you this vow: November 5th, 2024 will be Liberation Day in America. I will rescue Aurora. If you don't know where Aurora is, it's right outside of Denver. And that is also where Columbine happened. And every town that has been invaded and conquered, I don't think we've been invaded and conquered, y'all. And we will put these vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail or kick them out of the hell of our country. In honor of Joycelyn Nungaray, Laken Riley, Rachel Morin, and all of the others who are dead and mortally wounded at the hands of migrants who should have never been allowed in this country, I'm announcing today that upon taking office, we will have an Operation Aurora at the federal level. To expedite removals of this savage gang, I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to target and dismantle every migrant criminal network operating on American soil. No person who has inflicted the violence and terror that Kamala Harris has inflicted, notice the switch, on this community can ever be allowed to become president of the United States. Now, if this doesn't sell a chill down your spine, please tell me what you drink and what you eat so that I can have some of it, because I'm real worried right now. I've been tracking this kind of stuff since I was in graduate school. Back in the 90s, it was, white supremacists in Idaho. It was Stormfront, white identity movements. Nobody's really done, and this is part of the work that I'm doing right now, is to track this trajectory between white identity into white Christian nationalism and how all of these things are forces around the world right now. But Donald Trump is telling you, and when they say it out loud, you need to believe what they are going to do. We're going to start an operation. We're going to go get all these people. There is no people who've taken over this country. They're not these immigrants who have just overrun things. Most of the time, they're out here picking the produce every day that you get. They're working very hard in jobs every day, trying to put their kids through school. Do you think Florida is going to get rebuilt anytime soon? No. Let me tell you why Florida is not going to get rebuilt anytime soon. Florida's not going to get rebuilt anytime soon. There's not enough people to lay sheetrock. This is the practical thing. Governor DeSantis ran people out of the state trying to make this harder for migrant workers to work. And so if you understand anything about construction, there's going to be a bunch of mess laying on the ground for a couple of years, maybe more. He's already killed the insurance companies. But now you have this, where we're going to pick up people, we're going to clean this up. There's violence, but there's no rampant violence like this. Detroit is a terrible city. They just did a whole commercial about telling Trump about himself. Philadelphia is going to get talked about like this. I promise you there's going to be so much stuff about Philadelphia in the next 2 weeks it's going to make your head split. Because we are a 50-50 city, mostly African American, and we are crucial to the state of Pennsylvania, crucial in this voting. And that's going to be all done. This is why they also sent us all, this is why the state of Texas and that horrible governor, whose name I don't even like to talk about, sent people up to us on buses and to New York and other places, because this is going to make this easier for this to happen should this election turn. Now, you might think, what does this have to do with us? I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I know this is kind of a red state, and maybe my vote doesn't count, and maybe everything doesn't happen, and all of this. I'm not even talking to you about voting. Let me just show you what's about to happen to you all. Did you know this was coming to your town? Monday, October 21st, the 11th hour faith leaders meeting. Donald Trump, Ben Carson, Donald Trump Jr. You know the only way you get in this meeting, you have to be a faith leader. People are going to sign up for this. These fellow pastors, people that you know all around this city, they're going to come from everywhere in this state to come to this meeting. You're going to have him here at ground zero, and I promise you, it's probably going to be some bad stuff being said, even worse than what I've just shown you now. Why should you care? It may sound like I'm giving you a political message, but this is not actually a political message. This is a message about Christianity and what happens to everyday Christians who sit in their pews and love their pastor and read their scripture and participate in Bible study and don't want any of this kind of stuff to happen. You might have opinions about this. You might be pro-life. You may be pro-choice. You might be a whole bunch of things. But Christianity is being deployed as a weapon of nationalistic fervor and violence. And if you think back towards history, it's not too hard to think about where that can take us, where it took Nazi Germany, where it's taken places like Uganda, where it's trying to take Ukraine because Russia is putting a kind of imposition of Christianity upon it in the same ways. And because they don't like the fact that the Orthodox Church of Ukraine broke off from them. See, you think that Russia and Ukraine is like this regular war. It's not a regular war. It's a holy war. And if you think about it as a holy war and you understand it that way, then you understand why this is going on. It's the same reason why Jair Bolsonaro didn't want to believe that he had lost the election cycle, because he had been prophesied to. And so they took over their capital a year and a week, basically, after 2021 happened here. It's why in Africa we have leaders in Ghana who are going to be fighting pretty soon about whether Christianity can be there or not. It is why LGBTQ people in Africa are being persecuted. It is why in India with Hinduism, you have Muslims who are being persecuted because of Hindu Vita. So what I am saying to you is this. I walked through all of this to help you understand a couple of things. One is race and religion in this election are uniquely intertwined. It always has been this way in America, but this time the specter of violence on top of this is weaponizing everything, and it's weaponizing faith. It's weaponizing faith to use against people who are being targeted right now and being targeted to show how they are not like the majority that they want. And the majority that they want is white Christian nation. Now you might ask, how can this be when there are plenty of black Christians and Asian Americans and Latinos and everything else? What you have to understand is that that person who was running for governor here, he is aspiring to a certain kind of whiteness. Why would he be looking at Nazi kind of things? That's crazy. If you think about it, why would an African-American man look at Nazi stuff? Why would he be trying to learn German? And you can learn German if you want. I mean, I had to for, my education. But I had to learn it because I wanted to be a Nazi. What I'm saying to you is this. Whiteness is pervasive. And I don't mean this kind of whiteness because I don't like you because you're white or whatever. I mean a certain kind of ideological whiteness that is about power. It is not about ethnicity at this point. It's about who is in power and who is not. And I'm happy to unpack this when we talk about questions or anything, but what I want you to understand is that the faith is being prostituted. It's being distorted. It is being destroyed and desecrated. And if you understand that and you start to listen with your ears in this election cycle, what I hope you will do is talk to your relatives and friends who you know are buying some of this crap. I can't get to them because they are never going to come here and listen to me. Just by virtue of the fact of who I am when I walk in the door, they're going to be like, right? But you heard this. There's plenty to read. You can read my book. There's plenty of other stuff. Gerardo and others can help you with a whole list of things to read. But right now, we are at a moment. It is the 11th hour, but it's the 11th hour for a different reason. We're going to lose this democracy. It is not going to be a democracy anymore if you get certain things happening. I'm not here to frighten you, but I'm telling you, even if the Democrats win, it is going to be rough. This is not going away. This is not about, we can forget about this after the election. It's just going to keep metastasizing. And that's where we have to start getting people back, because we got too many people in this country who are believing lies instead of the truth, who are caught up in a kind of worship of a man who should not be worshiped. Because as far as I knew, when I learned in Scripture, there's only one God, and his name ain't Trump. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you so much. I want to leave time to take some questions. So I think we've got about maybe 20 minutes for that, and then I'll sign some books. Okay. So come up. You got a mic up here so everybody can hear. Come up. Don't be shy.
There's so many things to say, I don't know where to start, but I'll try a little bit and be real short, hopefully. We talk about being illiterate in math, science, and technology, but we're more illiterate in history, in sociology, and our understanding of what it means to be human.
Yeah.
We can have all the science and technology in the world, but if we can't educate the human, and that's what you're trying to do, and that's what so many of us are trying to do.
Yeah. I
feel like a fraud sometimes because I feel like there's still hope in the church, but I'm not so sure. Anytime you bring religion or God into a conversation to back you up, it seems to me that begins to kill the conversation. Mm-hmm. And to have a civil conversation, because Christianity and all religions has always been about power. from the very beginning. I mean, the church fathers wanted to have a canon, and they want to eliminate a bunch of things because they didn't agree with their theology.
Yeah.
And often I feel like religion has done a lot more harm than it's done good over the centuries. And I hate that. So I feel a fraud that I still want to capture something within the church that's worth hanging on to. But I'm struggling to find that, what I can hang on to. I know we need a community, a beloved community, that can fight these forces. But I'm concerned that maybe that it's too late for the church.
I don't think it's too late. I just think that the church is going to morph. And what I mean by that is, you know, I'm not a preacher, but I want to just say it this way. There's a separation of the wheat and the tares. And this is it, honestly. Because I think that what we're seeing, and I can see this, you know, in different countries around the world, where this separation about what power is versus, you know, the faith is, you know, at its very base, is really important. I think that the church is evolving in part because there are outside forces. So one, for me in America, is the coronavirus, because that really changed how people worshiped. It changed whether people went to church or not. One of them is youth being disgusted with it, you know, and maybe people come back in certain kinds of ways or certain kind of places. I also think that, you know, upheaval, I have a joke that I make all the time. I'm a reader of science fiction. I said, well, you know, if we just get some aliens, they'll get everybody together real quick. Because you will have an other that came from some other place outside of this earth. Now, I don't wish for that and whatever, but I want to get back to the one thing you said at the beginning. Everything has been focused on math and science, and this is something that I personally have been fighting as a religious historian, is that, you know, even in seminaries right now, you don't only have to take but one church history class. Can you believe it? One. Now, you got 2,000 years of church history, Christianity, and you only get one class. So those church fathers don't even get told to nobody, okay? They don't know Origen, they don't know Tertullian, they don't know those guys. They don't know who they are, right? And they barely know who Jonathan Edwards is if we're teaching American religion. You know, and I have students now, this is like, because I've got to say his name because I'm here. I have students who were like, I remember when Billy Graham died, and I said to my class, I'm like, we're going to have a short class today because I got to go write an article right now. And they were like, who's Billy Graham? That tells you everything. They don't even know enough of this recent American history to know who he is. So, or who he was. And so I think, you know, part of the hope is, I hope for all of you, is that you start to think about these creative ways that you reach out. You know, I can't do that every day because I'm teaching or I'm out here in the public speaking and trying to write and trying to get people to, you know, pay attention. We all have a part to do. But I think one of the things you can do to confront it is to start talking about that history, to start talking about all of these different things that'll help people to understand that you can't just be operating in a vacuum. How can it be that a mother who saw her son go to college and to become a meteorologist say that the government is doing this? You know, the other sad story I heard, I'll just tell real quick, is there's a guy who came on one of the talk shows saying that his father-in-law, I can't remember what little town it is outside of Asheville, lived there, and his house is completely destroyed. But he won't take help from FEMA because he's heard all the stories about conspiracy theories about FEMA. He won't take any help. And they don't have money, he and his wife don't have money to help him. And he said, I don't know what we're going to do. He's just going to die up there because he doesn't have food and have anything. He won't even go by the FEMA people to get food. This conspiracy stuff is killing people. And the people who are spreading it don't care. They don't care. It's about chaos. It's about upheaval and chaos. And that's what I'm trying to fight against. It's like, if you know what you're dealing with, you know at least how to begin to think about what can I do to talk to at least one individual who might not see the same way that I do, but to tell them, here, let me give you something. Let me read. Let's study together. Let's do something so that we can get there. And if we all take a part in doing that, then I think we can help spread this tide. There are bigger things that have to happen, but that's folks that are bigger than all of us in this room who are going to have to do that. And I hope we get them. Other questions? Just come up to the mic. I'm sorry, I needed to tell you up front that this was not going to be happy. But you didn't bring me here for that. Well, let me ask you a question. Let's close this for a minute. What's the temperature like here? I'm in Pennsylvania, so I know that there's Pittsburgh and there's Philadelphia and then there's the middle of the state. I'm going to be in the middle of the state next week, you know, doing some stuff. And I'm wondering, what do you feel like here in Charlotte? How do these things affect you? Or do they affect you at all? I'd be interested to hear that. Yeah, back in the back.
Well, it's really hard to say because, you know, we've had this horror happen in the western part of our state. Mm-hmm. So how is that going to affect our election? You know, I'm thinking it's Wake County, it's Mecklenburg County, mm-hmm. it's Greensboro, mm-hmm. Used to be Asheville. Yeah. You know, so it's really hard to say which way North Carolina is going to go.
Yeah, it is. But, I've been thinking about that a lot.
Yeah, but I really want to thank you too for giving us some great tools and language in which to talk with people and try to convince them of what's going on. So, mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think one thing I can say with this impending visit in, you know, another Monday or so from now, that this is an important time to talk to people here in the city that you know, that are going to be real hyped that that group of people are coming. But I think, you know, you will feel the effects of that afterwards. So be ready. Be ready. Because it's never calm afterwards, I got to tell you, unfortunately. It's never calm. Others, I'm interested to hear what you think.
It seems hard to get people to take this seriously.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you must have that difficulty.
Absolutely.
Connect that for me with the just basic news media, even the left-wing media, just not even really reporting on this. Mm-hmm. And why are they not as alarmed as we should be?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Here's the word that I did not say, and I was annoyed yesterday because I saw misinformation on one of the shows on MSNBC, and I was like, no, it's disinformation. It is a way in which information has been given to you is given to you bad. I need to tell you that the New York Times is not your friend anymore. Okay? It's just not. It's bad. I mean, those of us who are, you know, engaged in journalism right now, the way that the slant has gone, and like, for instance, I'll give you the example, I should just go look it up real quick, where they talked about the genocide thing, what he was saying about genes, that whole thing that he said, it should have been read a completely different way. And people were up in arms about this because it was just a way to just elide that he was talking about race science, basically. The science of race that was from the 19th century, that blacks and others were inferior to whites. And, you know, I know this very well because unfortunately my institution had a whole selection of skulls. They did cranial measurements of all this, and they had it out on display for a long time until everybody started screaming and saying, no, let me see the New York Times on genocide. Not genocide, but on race science. It was amazing to me because I just was like, how do you take this, what he just said, and make this like it was just some normal thing? Like, he's curious about genetics. No, he's not curious about genetics. He's like a white supremacist. He's not curious about genetics. That man is not like that. You know, I just thought that was that's a way in which this is getting distorted. So to answer this question about, you know, who's going to do this and who talks about it, it pops up on certain things every now and then. I find that I've been brought in a lot earlier on this year to talk about Christian nationalism and race. It has dwindled down to nothing now because we're so close to the election cycle and they're flooded and they can't keep up. And so they're missing a lot of stuff that's happening. That's one. Number two is your outlets aren't talking about this. So this example I gave about the New York Times, and I'll find it after we finish, I'll show it to you. That is a problem. The Washington Post is slightly better. But what you have to do is start digging for other outlets. You have to start reading the New Republic. You got to start reading the Atlantic. You got to start reading all these other things that you may or may not subscribe to, that where people can go into depth deep. Believe it or not, one good place to read about a lot of this stuff is Rolling Stone, because they have people out here tracking religion and tracking some of this crazy stuff. So I belong to a group of people who've been talking about New Apostolic Reformation. And we did a whole series of things for journalists, online webinars, so that they would learn about this. And we started in the summer because we knew that this was going to be a part of the election cycle. And it has really helped. Let me give you an example from where I live. Outside of Philadelphia is Lancaster. You know, most of you, if you've been to Lancaster before, you know this is big Amish country and everything, Mennonites, Amish. But it's also a hub for New Apostolic Reformation people. And so there's a couple of people from Lancaster who've been writing about this in the Lancaster newspaper who are excellent. So sometimes it's like people who are off the grid, kind of, who really get it. And so I think that's the thing. We don't get this anymore. And if you were on social media, for instance, you get stuff fed to you on Facebook you would not believe. You are not. Don't be reading nothing you get on Facebook, okay? Because it's just, yeah, you saying, because it's all bad. You know, before X, it was Twitter. But now you have Elon Musk, who has decided he is parking himself in my state until the end of the election cycle because he wants to flood the zone with disinformation. And that is what X has been. So if you don't know how to read that site, all you get now is porn and craziness. I know how to read it because the moment he bought the platform, I locked my account. Gerardo knows this. I locked my account so nobody could follow me unless I bring you in. And I had curated all these news cycles. Well, the news sites. Most of the news sites haven't left, but for somebody who doesn't know how to read this, you are just getting flooded with disinformation every time. So there was a picture the other day. AI is not helping you either. I mean, there's so much more I could talk about. I could take this whole afternoon. But let's use AI as an example. These AI-generated images of a little girl holding a cat. I think it was a cat or a dog. I can't remember which one it was. But that was a completely generated image, but people believed it was from the flood. Today, I've been seeing this picture of a cat hanging on the side of a door. That's not from this storm. That's from that's from when Saudi Arabia and Doha had a flood. That's from like a year ago. So you don't even know the images you're seeing because they are lies too. Okay? So this is where you don't get all the things you need to see. And your local news, or if you earn by Sterling Communications, you can forget it. Whatever station you have, go look up your station that you'd like to watch. Sterling Communications, propaganda. So, I mean, it takes so much. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you probably sit up here thinking, how should you know all this? I've been looking at this for years and years and years and years and years. It has taken me a lot of time to put this together. I don't just deal with people in religious studies. I'm dealing with people who are in communications, who are doing disinformation, like from the Knight Foundation. I am dealing with all kinds of people right now who are trying to stem the flow of this. And the reason why we can't keep up with it right now, I'm going to give you a really big reason why. Because when Elon Musk bought Twitter, because so much of this stuff came through Twitter, they made you pay $30,000 to $50,000 or more just to get the data that you could pull down. I had students who were studying this. It stopped all the studies because most universities are not going to give you this much money to pull down data. And most of the data now is all scrambled. He's blocking people left and right that talk about anything that's truth. He is the disinformation king. So I don't even have to, again, I could have done this whole thing a whole different way, but I had to talk about Trump because I needed you to see that last quote to let you know how this language has ratcheted up. There's language about all of this all the time. When Charlottesville happened, there are good people on both sides. No, they're not. A young woman got killed. There was a march with tiki torches and khakis. Jews will not replace us. The anti-Semitism that people are talking about right now, before October 7th happened last year, I was working on anti-Semitism and Jews and African Americans in America. When that happened, and I watched how this whole definition of anti-Semitism changed, now the problem is that you got anti-Semitism happening everywhere. When Trump said, if the Jews don't vote for me, they're stupid, you probably heard that. That's a warning. It is a warning. You know, they're worried about anti-Semitism because people are protesting on campus? No, you should be worried about that. That's what got 6 million plus people killed. So I'm just saying to you that there's so much flood in the zone right now. It's A, hard to keep up, but B, these legacy media people don't want to touch certain things. So we can't even talk about that part of anti-Semitism. Some people have said it, but you know, most of that just went down a tube because it's like a fire hose of crap coming at everybody all the time. And it's really hard. And if you don't know how to sift through it to understand, it's very difficult. But what you have here is kind of a distillation of what I've been doing for the last 4 years, but really brought into this moment that we're in right now. Yes.
So here's the challenge. Give us some points to sift through all the crap, because there's only a little time left over. So, because obviously if you can't trust social media, you can't trust a lot of the, heck, not even social media, media in particular. So what are some real quick and dirty hits about, okay, these are some places you can go right now, try and distill, because I think that's what folks need to try and cut through the crap right now in the last few hours.
There are several places that have chair sheets about Project 2025. You can look for Project 2025 summary from Ali Velshi. I think he has it up on the site on MSNBC. That's one. Look at Media Matters for America. That's another. That is a really important spot to look at that. You should look, Ari Berman has a thing on voting. And hopefully this is getting taped so I can just write this down later. I can send it to Gerardo or Pastor and we'll get it done. Ari Berman, I'm forgetting the other person who's doing this. Mark Elias is really important because they're talking about all the ways in which they're going to be looking at the states for voting. That's important. One of the things you ought to pay attention to is when people are passing out voting things here. Don't sign all these petitions because you're going to end up getting a lot of bad mail, okay? I haven't written on my Substack in a while, but I probably will in the run-up to the election to talk about some of this stuff, to do this, and you can find me and I'll give that to them so they can pass it around to you. I would also look at a couple of things. One is, let me think about this real quick because I know Voting Matters, I can't remember what the name of it is exactly. I might have to give you this one too. And then I would say for talking points, your clear talking points is that, you know, number one, people aren't demons. Okay, that's a very clear talking point. And you're going to hear stuff like this. Number two, if you have people who have relatives on the other side of the state who are saying, you know, you can't trust FEMA or whatever, FEMA put out a whole other thing. You can go to their site right now debunking all these things. I believe you have a Republican congressman right now who put out a big thing from your home state, and I have to remember who this is, but he just put out a whole thing debunking all the conspiracy theories about Asheville and other places and what. Tom Perlis, thank you. Yeah, to pay attention to that. That's actually a really good one. I was really pleased to see that happen. I would, what was that? I would not take, I mean, when I say the New York Times is compromised, yeah, I hate to say that because I've written op-eds for the Times, but right now it's just a little bit too slanted. Pay attention to your local newspaper as you can when you hear about stuff, but I would really be watching, you know, the kinds of things that get said. If it just makes you sound like it's a little hinky, it probably is. Okay? Because what you have to decide on now is how do I move and how do I talk to people, you know? There's going to be a lot of chum in the water, as we say. If you're a fisherman, you know what I'm talking about. You throw out that bait, you throw out the blood, so you catch the shark, you catch whatever. There's going to be a lot of chum in the water. And the way to do that is to sort of take a step back and say, what am I listening to? What am I reading? And how do I need to expand that? And I can, you know, send you all a list of things because I'm just thinking off the top of my head right now, but I can think of some things I'll do that. But in terms of doing what you said, I'm gonna look at you and say one thing. In our community, in the African American community, right now the biggest problem is that we got people who don't want to vote. Because they're just like, they're all the same. Why should I care? You know? I don't necessarily buy what President Obama said about black men, but what I do buy is that there's a lot of people who need a lot of help and won't vote. I don't know if your registration has closed yet, but you need to be canvassing making phone calls, doing all that kind of stuff. If that's where you're going, that's where you need to go. If you're going the other way, then you need to understand, if you want to vote for a Republican candidate or something, you need to investigate that person. Clearly, nobody looked at the candidate for governor. I'd be worried about y'all's fact checkers here. Because that's a big problem. But my suspicion is that they knew and they're just going to run him anyway. And he has said some really crazy stuff. You didn't even need to find what you found out about him to know that he was not a good candidate. And I think it's terrible that he put his wife in a video to kind of try to clean that mess up. So those are the things I would say, and, pray. Or is that one of the things says, pray, vote, and stand. Make that again. Pray, vote, stand. Because it's going to be important. And we're looking at something, and you're about to have these folks here in this town spreading a whole bunch of lies. So, thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you so much.